Heard a god-awful howl one night that lasted close to a minute. But I live in Alaska, so it could have been some other animal. Not sure, but it made my hair on my arms rise. 2013, late November, Oregon, on the OR 58 mile marker 50, I pulled over to chain up. A Squatch walked past me at about 50 feet. The area I was parked at is wide enough that 3 tractor trailers can park side by side. It took 3 steps to cross this area, and on the 4th step, it was stepping down into the creek. To hear them speak is really fast Japanese. I will never forget this. It was about 9 to 10 foot tall with massive shoulders that put Arnold Schwarzenegger in his bodybuilding days to shame. Maybe 50 to 60 feet, we were stalked by it, but we couldn't see it. We could hear it, and when it moved, we moved, and it stopped when we stopped, and you could tell it was bipedal by the way it was walking, moving through the brush. It scared the hell out of us, and you could tell it wasn't a bear. It just sounded too big. Never went back there again. February 23rd, 2020, my girlfriend and I finally saw one from roughly 70 feet in the Blue Mountains just outside of my town here in Walla Walla, Washington. I have seen a Bigfoot at my ranch in Young, AZ, and it comes down to there. I'm pretty sure I saw multiple vampires in the French Quarter, New Orleans, Louisiana. The Dungeon is a vampire bar. The castle in Ybor City, Tampa is too. Must be something about ports and night walkers. Three Sisters Wilderness. Oregon is a hot spot from border to border. I was close too in daylight and saw it uprooting a smaller tree about 15 feet long and leafy. With one hand on a run, threw it in the air about 30 feet over its shoulder. It made 3 vocalizations screaming full volume at close range and howling a long time, and ending with a whoop whoop, all timed precisely to set my horse off, while it was stopped behind the bushes. It ran upright with ease and was still pulling its way through the brushy area at a 45-degree angle away from us, using its long arms to gain speed while running, reaching a speed of 35 miles per hour. It looked like a giant Australopithecus, covered from top of foot to top of hands with chimp-type hair that appeared to be shedding. Its face had a big mouth and forehead was sloped and classic crest on top of the skull. Was driving to Nimkish Heights, 8 kilometers from Port McNeill on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, with 2 of my children and my son's girlfriend during a nasty wind and rainstorm. I had been pulled over by the local RCMP and was told to run my 4-way flashers because my taillights were out, so I wouldn't have someone drive into me from behind. I pulled onto the highway again and turned on the 4-way flashers. This was at the bottom of Sayward Hill, right before Sayward Junction. I made my way up the winding hill and stepped on the gas to gain momentum. All of a sudden, I saw something flash across the road. Instantly, I started hitting my brakes and looking to my left. My 4-way flasher light went on, and I was looking into the face of one angry-looking Sasquatch. I remember my mouth gaping open in astonishment, and I started saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I think I just saw Bigfoot." It was at that moment my adult son in the back seat told me to quit braking and speed up, and my little girl in the front was crying in fright. I accelerated and started comforting my daughter. Then there was this large banging sound, and my son in the back seat shouts, "What the hell was that?" It literally hit right where I was leaning against inside the car. I sped up more. By this time we had crested the hill and were on a straightaway. When we reached our destination, we got out to look where my son said he felt the reverberation of the banging sound, and my God, there was a large dent in the car at the height where the shoulder had been resting at. We wondered if something had been thrown at us when we were on the flat area when it struck the car. This occurred on Sayward Hill, heading north on Highway 19. The year would have been 2010. Had 3 Bigfoot sightings in my life. So far, never felt threatened in any way. And the first time I was only about 10 years old, and it was close enough it could have grabbed me before I would have been able to scream. I have relatives who live in Sharps Chapel, Tennessee, right next to Norris Lake, and they've had strange things going on for decades. Lots of Sasquatch prints in the soil around the fields where they grow corn and various garden items. They have also been plagued by morning visits of black panthers or cougars, which the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency denies even exist in the area. Saw a white Sasquatch looking out of a cave at my granddaughter and her friends and myself one time. Although I didn't speak out loud, the Sasquatch, I told my granddaughter to think good and peaceful thoughts before it saw us. I did say it in my mind, and they were not here to bother you. My gun is for protection from bears, not to harm you. We left fruit as a gift. We had no problems all weekend long. Listen, I know you may not be willing to accept this. Many people aren't, but I truly, truly know what this is. I have seen what you've seen, and my son and I both experienced this. We have seen a cyclops-looking Sasquatch, and we've seen them literally snap limbs off trees. We've heard them make noises. I can tell you exactly how they leave tracks, and I can tell you why it looks like that when you film them. I can tell you your camera won't focus, and your videos seem to constantly be deteriorated before you upload them. Seems like you can't get a clear shot, then it deteriorates right before you upload it. You can even see it changing sometimes while you're watching it. It's beyond understanding. So at a friend's house a few nights ago, at night we were outside and I saw a little person. He was all skin, like whitish flesh colored and thin. No clothes, about 3 to 4 feet tall, and had big pointed ears and jagged sharp teeth. Would that be a puckwudgie, a goblin, or an elf? It was super fast too. It could run and disappear. He ran up to the porch we were sitting at, looked at us, and ran a few feet away and disappeared. One night, my son got off early and called me for a ride home. I went to pick him up, and he had already started walking to meet me. As soon as he got in the car, I asked him why he was on the wrong side of the street. He says as he passed the ravine, he heard a weird noise. He looked and he seen something strange looking at him. He said, "I swear, Mom, it looked like a rake." He was really scared. The next night, we heard weird noise alongside our house. He said, "That's the noise I heard when I seen the rake." I did not look outside. Now I'm spooked. The next morning, I went out by our window, and the ground was all disturbed where we heard the noise. When my son woke up, he had a burning sensation on his chest. I said, "Let me look at it." He had a welt close to his collarbone in the shape of a hand, but the hand shape was triple the size of my own hand. I don't know what to make of it. I didn't want to scare him. All I know is after his rake sightings, things have been weird for a while. We finally moved, but it was something I will never forget. One came in my house and stood at my bed. It took me out of my body, and my dog came from under the covers barking viciously and lunged at it and chased it out. It was about 7 feet, whitish gray, emaciated looking, bulbous head with big eyes, ugly face, long skinny arms, and legs, long black sharp fingernails. I just wonder what it would have done if my dog hadn't have been so brave. We later saw several in the woodland behind our house. Some nights they scratched and knocked on the house and mimicked voices. I think to lure us out, one cried like a baby. This was in the wee hours. I think I have a nest in the woods. For a while they would peek from behind the barn when we were driving up the night to go in the house. I saw a solid white man. Yeah, seen 4 creatures that were half man, half animal. The solid white man was too far away to give details. 2 friends seen the same one and showed me a photo of one on TV. Only details I have on the solid white man: skinny, solid white, and hairless. I had experiences for years. I'd wake up not able to breathe or move, and a large dark male shadow was by my bed leaning over me every time. Very scary, paralyzed and terrified. It stopped suddenly. In the past 4 years, in our new house, it only happened twice. I had many encounters with Hatman and shadow creatures. Used to have photos of it. My husband would take pictures when I was asleep, fighting something to get off of me. I used to always see Hatman in doorways, watching or standing in front of my bed. Had experiences for 20 plus years. Wide awake, sometimes unable to open my eyes, with something sitting on my chest, restricting movement and breathing. Once seeing something standing at the edge of my bed, a couple times seeing it sitting on my chest. Trying to get through the Lord's Prayer is difficult, but in doing so, it releases the hold on me and vanquishes the being. It's exhausting. I was too scared to try to fall asleep. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. If you happen to let these horrible, terrifying encounters get into it, arm it with the Lord's Prayer. On the 5th of January this year at 3:20 a.m., the night after I videoed a crazy UFO, I had assumed I was in a hyper-realistic dream, but in this dream I was fighting something. I taught martial arts for 20 years and always taught my students one particular combination: a left to the head, right to the ribs, then finish with another left to the jaw. So in this dream, I threw this combination at whatever I was fighting. The left to the head didn't connect. However, the right to the ribs did, and I felt bones break. Then the left to the jaw also connected, and I felt bones break. But when the left to the jaw connected, I felt immense pain in my left shoulder. It was so bad, I sat upright in bed screaming obscenities. The pain in my left shoulder was very real, and both of my hands were throbbing, as if actually I'd been in a real fight. So I got up of bed, took some painkillers, and stayed awake. The pain didn't go away for a good 6 hours. This really freaked me out. The Hatman always appears to me as a solid black figure with no facial features, a full-length coat, and of course, a black top hat. I had a crazy dream. It was right after I'd been listening to a lot of Sasquatch, Dogman, Missing 401. I only remember it happened in the winter of 2020. The dream was so real and of a nature I had never experienced anything like this. Suddenly, my room was illuminated through the window and walls opposite my bed. The intense bright light is what awakened me. I remember slowly being drawn up off of my bed very slowly. The feeling was very strange to me, so it did not feel light and floaty, like I was being suspended in a thick, invisible force that prevented any movement. I was facing towards the light, legs down, arms back and down, head and body tilted slightly back. I was fighting the force and somehow remember feeling like I had more strength to fight it off, yet I couldn't move. I had this uncontrollable urge to just give up. My strength was spent. That was the most intense part of the dream. I remember just submitting to the force of the pull as I reached out in prayer, called out Jehovah's name in my mind, and I can't remember if I finished the prayer. I was just a few feet from my bedroom wall and expected to be drawn through it when suddenly the light was gone and I awoke laying flat in my bed. I looked around from the safety of my covers and saw nothing disturbed, so chalked it up as a lucid dream. I did remember my dream that morning. It was strange because usually my dreams are pretty bland and I usually can't recall them. It was right after I saw some pictures that other people have drawn. Someone showed me a person being drawn up into the light. It matched my body positioning exactly. That got my attention rather quickly. Was what I experienced only a dream? I guess I'll never know. He had a tan-colored hat when I saw him. It started with the chase up the stairs. When was a kid, these dark entities were attracted to your soul. I personally think the last one I had, when my eldest child was asleep with me in my bed, I could see it approaching and had a terrible feeling it was coming to see my girl. I couldn't move at all, and my thought and love for my baby girl, I kicked out like a fish, like a massive flash of white light filled the room. And it went after getting up. I had a strange feeling of victory. Felt like my fight had kicked it out. That was 5 years ago. I haven't had no more even the feeling of its presence. I've seen the Hat Man many times, mainly as a child. The Hag I've also seen on several occasions. Sleep paralysis. A few times throughout my life, but not consistently. The last time was the worst. I could see an antique clock, and I watched time tick as I actively tried to move. I was laying on my side, my body cramping up as it resisted to a weight that was pressing me further into the mattress and pillow. This incident is what made me realize that all the incidents really did happen and weren't just me dreaming. I was held down by a dark figure that came through my window, and people tried telling me it was sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis doesn't make your blinds move. I've experienced it twice in my life. When I was 19 and 20, it felt like someone was trying to enter my body. Both times it was only like 20 seconds, but seemed longer. I'm in my 60s now, and it never happened again. Come to think of it, I was on my back both times. I always sleep on my side. Encountered a shadow man once when I was in my teens. My uncle and grandpa had the same encounter at the same age. The only difference is my uncle had the old hag and me and my grandpa had the shadow man. But it was the same exact encounter, the same age for all three. I just pray my son doesn't have it happen to him. It's a scary feeling not being able to move or talk and something is walking up to your bed trying to grab you. Shaking my head. I couldn't do anything. I just thought in my mind, please help me, Jesus, and it instantly disappeared, and I could move. The whole encounter was about 10 minutes. I was lying there for a while, just looking at it, staring at me in the doorway, watching me. Shaking my head. That was the most scared I think I've ever been in my whole entire life. This was close to an experience I once had. I went to bed once night with the idea of trying to make contact with a Sasquatch close to me. I closed my eyes and started to drift off into darkness. Just then, a face started to materialize in the darkness. It was the Sabe male face, and it had a mean look to it. It asked, "What do you want?" That surprised the hell out of me, and I broke contact and woke. Lesson learned. Always have your questions lined before you do this. I don't know if it was the Hat Man I encountered, but I did encounter a shadow being in a hat in 1998. The day my dad passed, and it was my belief he was attracted to the sadness as he fed off of it. He was the size of a child wearing a large brimmed hat and crawling on the ceiling of my room. It's possible I was dreaming, but I don't think so. The little people rang true with my childhood. I would have been around 4 years old. I wasn't sure if I was awake or dreaming, but they would appear from the door. This looked like a crack in the plaster when you really looked closely at it. Walk along the windowsill. Then my Sasquatch sighting was 2017. He stood next to a tree, facing sideways next to me. Got to see his whole profile, but not the face. I've seen the Hat Man multiple times throughout my life. I've also described him as a long coat on. He also came when I was very sad, like the darkest days of my life type sad. He would just stand in the corner in the doorway right at the edge of my vision. Never seen Hat Man, but I encountered all types of shadow figures and shadow balls that roll around. I have met the Sasquatch from my youth in a dream a few years ago as an adult. We communicated telepathically, and I knew we were connected spiritually and as a soul family. He even told me his name, but unfortunately I didn't write it down and forgot it. The dream was so vivid, but I could still hear it. Not long later, I was shown in another dream a whole family in the woods on a mountain above the house I grew up in, where I escaped World War III going on at home as a child. These were all from different ones I've seen with my own eyes in real life, here in my current Providence. I wonder if they were all related and why it seemed I was still being followed here, a whole province away from the ones who followed me as a child and the kids in the woods. The one in my dreams were brown, and what I caught watching me here in Ontario was all black, swallow the light kind of black. The others ranged from red to white to dark gray with a white crest. I've had a hooded figure at my flat. I thought for 30 years it was a Spanish lady dressed in morning clothing until I started listening to confessionals about 12 months ago. Now I think about it daily. I have many unanswered questions. My dogman encounter was on a hard gravel road. I doubt there were tracks. Even if there were, I was not going back. Unfortunately, the Hat Man used to visit the nursing home I worked at. He always took a soul when he visited, and roommates would always describe him. There was a Bigfoot portal. I played to 3,000 of them. They gave us a 7-foot tall snake stick. I got to see how the females are industrious and make all sorts of cocoon beds. I laid in them. The boys' teen like to dig in tree trunks, and I saw their garden. There is a female, I believe, that makes her own art in mounds. Fascinating. After the attempted ambush, I've been more aware of them. First encounter, I would say 18 feet away. Since then, I cannot get any closer than 30 yards or more. About 25 yards at the first Bigfoot encounter scared the crap out of me when I was around 12 years old. I never seen a Sasquatch, but I did see an unknown type of cryptid when I was young walking down a back road in my hometown of Palinville, New York. The best description I could give is it looked like a baby velociraptor or a tiny T-Rex. I was within touching distance. It was dead in a ditch, and I went into what now I recognize as shock for a few days. I saw a Hat Man once, and he was terrifying. I couldn't move or scream. He went around my bed deliberately slow. Hearing howls down a hill by Mitchell a few years ago. Across a small road at night for 20 minutes, I had a huge spotlight. Was cone-headed, huge, very built, not all fur. I never saw it, but man, I could smell it. It smelled like dirty dish rags. Thought something was dead at first. Closest to Bigfoot was 10 feet. Farthest was over 1,000 yards through a camera zoom lens. First one I saw was about 30 feet away. I got a picture. How clear it is a matter of opinion. It was black against a snow background. You can see a full silhouette except for the face. And that area is somewhat hid behind a branch. It seemed to be peeking at us through the branch. Even from a distance, they apparently have very good eyesight. I've never actually seen one, but I've been in some of the sections of forest here in Indiana that was certainly something out in the woods. I was sitting in a deer stand, and suddenly the whole woods went dead silent. I could hear something large off in the bush, but never saw it. Needless to say, once the sounds of nature came back, I got the hell down and out of the woods. Last time I ever went hunting. I drove by one on the side of the interstate, so it was like 10 feet away. I was bluff charged, never seen what it was. Butterfield. If you know, you know. I experienced a chanting, increasing in sound and intensity. At first, it was barely noticeable. This was on Gum Road between Ritchie and Pierce City in southwest Missouri. Only difference was our car was never shut off, so we didn't stick around once the sound got loud, so we no longer could explain it away. Every time I've told the story, the only way I can explain is it was like 1,000 monks surrounding you and vocalizing this intense, pulsating chant. I had one encounter with the old hag, which she came out of the wall on one side of my bedroom and walked across in front of me and disappeared on the other side of the room through the wall. She never looked at me, and the lights were on in the room. I didn't find her as menacing as the black top hat guy. He is just rude and invasive. wants to be right in your face or in your dreams or stand and stares. Neither one have ever physically touched me. The first encounter I had with a wolf being was when we were traveling late at night, during a full moon. Our convoy was at the edge of a heavily forested country. It was winter, so the dirt mountain road was covered in a foot of snow, and when the full moon rose above the mountains, it was almost daylight. We saw a dark, hairy animal run across the field in front of us. It couldn't have been a bear. It ran too fast. A little concerning, because we were out in the middle of pretty much nowhere and hitting a large animal would be a problem. I was looking at the map and documenting the coordinates when I glanced at the side mirror. There was a large, dark figure running behind our vehicle. You could see it in the taillights. A few minutes later, we heard what sounded like a thump, and the soldier behind me yelled, "WTF? What in God's name is that?" As I glanced at the side view mirror, the dark animal was running beside the vehicle and keeping up. I turned on the spotlight, which shined into the side mirror, illuminating the dark figure. Oh my God, what I saw was shocking and unreal. My mind had to accept what I was looking at. My first thought was Anubis, the Egyptian god of death. It was shocking, horrifying, unreal. The overwhelming feeling to barf, piss, or crap in your pants punched you in the gut like Rocky Balboa. I'm Italian, so that's the only example I could think of. After what seemed like an eternity, realistically it had only been a couple of minutes, our person in command who was driving screamed, "Lock and load." I had already done so when I saw the first dark, furry thing run in front the first time. This Anubis thing was intelligent because it heard the clicks and loading of the guns. It fell back and ran over some boulders and disappeared into the forest. I still feel that fear of anxiety and doomed feeling, even now. That was absolute fear, and the image of its face makes me shiver, but I am curious for some reason. I want to see one again. Found shelters, heard tree knocking, and responding to tree knocking. San Isabel National Forest, Colorado. Last week, Fairplay, Colorado, had at least 50 yards from my camp. My sister heard a huge howl with lung capacity beyond any human. My mother heard communicating grunting between two different animals. Now I'm a believer. Dogs, 3 dogs, restless and scared. I saw one from approximately 300 yards away, seen shoulders and head above the 7 to 8 foot diamond willow saplings on the edge of the cleared abandoned homestead in North Fairbanks, Alaska, 1976. First time we saw one was about 60 feet. Second, 20 feet, all in the California Hay Fork lookout outside of Weed. In the 70s, we rented a houseboat at Lake Shasta. We had to count coves and inlets as we drove the lake so we would not get lost according to the map we were given. The one inlet that we tied up for the night had a small shore about 18 to 24 inches wide, and Mount Shasta went straight up. Anyway, the only way safely to get to this narrow shore was by boat, and when hubby got off the boat to tie up, there were big footprints there again. This was the late 70s. I will never forget. I saw a Bigfoot. He or she was out in the open about 50 feet in front of me. This happened twice. I live in East Tennessee and have seen these beings about 3 different times, fishing very remote mountain river bottoms. I never believed that these things were real, but I was very wrong. I've seen the big male over 10 feet tall and legs like tree trunks. I've seen the female sitting with 3 babies, 2 6 feet tall juveniles with arms on them past their knees. The babies that were sitting with the female were like little chimps, but with more human looking faces. There was one baby up in a tree with his or her leg hanging down, just sitting there looking at me. The mother just stared forward, trying to blend in with the background. I just turned around and went the opposite way. I've never been back to that side of the property again. If anyone is on the fence in their belief, let me tell you, I did not believe in the monkey man in the woods, but they are there and in fine form, and they do not want us around their young. Believe me. I had 3 Bigfoot here by my house in 2013. Closest one was on a dirt road a few miles from my house. Me and my cousin were out driving at 3 a.m. and one ran out front of us. We got the car up to about 15 feet away and it took off. Logan Canyon, late 70s. Although I wasn't thinking Squatch at the time, did think guardian angel or possibly the spirit of a mountain man that just saved my butt from a big moose. Drove a Scout up a side of a canyon past 10-foot statue of the infamous grizzly bear, Old Three Toes. Was sage hunting grouse with shotgun and number 6 birdshot. Climbed a long switchback through the Douglas fir and sat quietly on top watching a fisher move through the trees. A moose came huffing up the same trail. The wind was in my favor and I'm peeking one eye from behind the 120-foot tree, first limbs 20 feet. When about 18 feet, I stepped on a twig and startled the moose. It stopped trying to smell me, but knew there was something there and turned left slowly across a field for about 20 yards, and I stepped out to let him see me. He stopped looking, disgusted and afraid, and casually continued up the 60-foot hill toward the quacking aspens. I kept realizing his pace was about the time he was reaching the summit. There was not a rock big enough for cover. About 3 seconds after his butt disappeared in the middle of my next step, Mind Speak shouts, "Get down and don't move." Hell, I was already in the air on down and landed 5 feet to the left on one knee as he just charged over me the hill, stopping 20 feet from swinging his head, searching. When his eyes turned upon me, I looked at the ground, then back at him. His eyes moved away from the position. Then I watched his eyes fearfully express WTF and frantically race back up over 50 miles of rolling aspen hills. I ran up after and could hear him crashing through the aspens. I then verbally said, "I appreciate you saving my butt, and now I reckon I may have a male Sabe experience." Had one huff grunt at me from less than 10 feet away. That was way too close. A Bigfoot walked up to my hunting blind just before daylight. I saw 2 muck mermaids in the Ohio River Creek Cats Run. Looked like 2 huge serpent beings, but the more reports I heard, I think it's the mermaids. I seen a hyena running alongside Route 9 in Ransom, West Virginia. It was chasing a pack of dingoes. This happened in late spring 2020. I know what I saw. I was driving home from church. My wife was sleeping. My 3 children were in the back seat. It was walking across the road. I was about 200 yards away. I was like, "What is that?" At first, I thought it was a baby cow, but no, as I got closer, I could see very good what it was. Remember, I'm driving towards the bird dinosaur beast. At first, he thought he didn't notice me coming. Then, it jumped into the air a little bit and a hop. He tried to run, but his little chicken feet slipped on the road, so I was able to get a good look, and he ran into the grass. I could see his backside as he ran off. I could not believe my eyes. Then my son grabbed my shoulders and said, Daddy, did you see that?" I got pissed off at Kamat Lake alone with 2 of them. I feel they were young ones because when I was scared, I got angry at them from inside my tent. Okay, what's throwing huge rocks into the lake at 3 a.m., 11 meters from my tent? 3 a.m. I got pissed off, scared, angry. Not for anyone. Yes, I looked when I got up and out. Nothing there. I could see where the boulders were in the pea gravel. No foot track. After I yelled at them, they stopped chucking rocks and giggled at me. Have experience in the CLE, Elam, I-90 corridor. My family thinks I'm crazy, but that's okay. When you have a huge buck with a rack jumping over the tall fencing straight at you, with his eyes wide open and tongue hanging, then he gets yanked back, It kind of makes you think. Thank God it was early morning and no one next to me when I swerved to avoid it, but it disappeared backwards. I had Bigfoot within 30 feet the first time and 50 yards the second time. Both times was between 11 and 2 a.m. I've had contact with what you call the star people. I call watchers at a distance of 30 feet above me and my brother. We were not abducted as I know, but did have communication with them through Mindspeak. First words for us, me and my younger brother, who was 3, me 8, they asked us not to fear them. There were 3 of them, like mother, father, child. We never forgotten this, and I've pretty much looked through my life. 65 now. They said they'd be back, and they watch us and protect us humans from destroying the planet. This was also around the time of Seabrook nuclear plant, shortly after us humans started clean up our air and waters with Jimmy Carter. It was one of the better cleanups. They said they would be back. I've seen many oddities in the Sabe. I've not had yet, and I know I will as I'm a tree hugger, but I can protect our environment. I'm not far from Nova Scotia, up in Maine. It's full of beautiful trees. Along the I-90 corridor near CLE-ELEM, I saw a silver-haired Sabe, all one color, its face dark. It was walking in the open along the river. As I passed in my car, I was stunned and didn't say a word to my mother. For some reason, I didn't think she would believe me. We were on our way to Kamano Island in March 2022 on a Friday heading east. It was sunny and clear sunshine hitting his fur. He was huge. I had no fear as we were traveling in a truck. I could still see it in my mind. I lived in Dartmouth and Halifax, the eastern shore, 20 miles east of Musquodoboit in Lake Charlotte. About 5 miles back in the woods with my 80-pound pit bull who spent time out west chasing away bears. She left me there standing, running away with her tail between her legs. I could hear something walking back every step I took. It took. When I stopped, it stopped. That was the longest 5-mile walk back of my life. An area outside of Darrington is Glacier Peak. I did a bridge rebuild for the USFS in Wilderness Land 20 years ago, just below there. I heard a howl from one of the ridges above, hiking out one night. They have followed me all my life, from 8 years old till now. I know when they are around and keep my distance. Some are okay, some are not, just like us. A friend of mine could have killed 2 Sasquatches when he was hunting elk in western Washington. They were in 2 different areas and only a few miles apart. He said they looked too much like a human, so he couldn't shoot. Another friend told me he's seen an off-white one cross a highway he was walking next to on his way home. He never walked home again after that. This happened in Grays Harbor, Washington. This past summer, me and my boyfriend went to Atlantic City to go to the beach and casino, and we went to some boardwalk haunted house type thing about the Jersey Devil. We were both really bored of Atlantic City, so I suggested we drove to Leeds Point and camp out. I looked at the coordinates where the birthing house was, and we drove around trying to find the spot we could park the truck. Finally found a wildlife sanctuary on the bay, and you could see the whole AC skyline. We were laying on the dock looking at the stars, and he kept chanting Jersey Devil 3 times. And I was joking, saying that wouldn't work. You should try 13 times. And after a while, we saw this huge translucent growing creature fly over. It reminded me of a falcor from Neverending Story. This happened another time about an hour later. It didn't fly from the same vantage point off to the horizon. It kind of appeared from nowhere for about 10 seconds and disappeared, which confirmed my theory that cryptids are interdimensional. Then we moved to the back of the pickup truck, and I fell asleep randomly when my boyfriend was fixated on what he thought was a deer in the woods. I guess his curiosity drew him out there, and he saw hooves on a bipedal creature, translucent and glowing again. Got scared crapless and ran back to the truck to wake me up. It was a really cool experience. When I was little, my sister had an experience that scared the crap out of me. I used to sleep in her old room at my grandmother's, and she'd come sleep in there on weekends to visit. She was living in Pomona with her friend and going to Stockton College. Her dogs were outside, started freaking out barking at a hunter, Eastern Oregon. I could have reached out and touched his foot. I was laying on the ground crawling through very thick new pole thicket and young dug fir trees. I heard something walking on 2 feet coming straight at me, but whoever it was wouldn't answer when I yelled hello. It just helped it come closer. I couldn't stop saying anything, just laid on the ground. It walked back and forth. As it got closer, I saw its feet go right in front of me. They were massive, 4 feet away, massive, thick, like a ski boot, hairy feet, 19 inches to 21 inches. I thought it was hear my heart pounding so loud in his ears and chest. Luckily, the cover was so thick it couldn't see me even if it looked straight down over me. To make matters worse, I could see that I wasn't the first person to make the mistake of going in that area in the section. There were pants and a boot and what looked like surely decomposed skin on bone around one of it. Under a statement, I was glad it walked away. Someone else in Blackwater he showed up with. However, if I had something Eric wanted to steal when he shows up, my odds of survival would be better if I ran over a 900-pound Yeti. She went back on the deck and saw the tree brushes rustling and heard the eeriest pitched scream. They did not sound human or animal. This is more commonly reported sighting. I didn't want her going back to that house. About 50 feet away, 1974, old railroad tunnel in Ohio. 5 others witnessed it. 9 to 10 foot tall, 900 to 1,000 pounds, blackish brown hair. Hey, I'm Connor from Bigfoot Anon, and I'm always on the hunt for the next big adventure. When you're on the trail for long hours, you build up quite the stench, enough to drive any skunk ape or yeti away. Luckily, I'm on the quest now for the solution to all my problems. Yeti bars. They do exist. Available in tons of different scents and fragrances. Check out YetiBars.net for more and use my code BA10 for a special offer. Clean like a beast. Yeti Bars!